It is 15 minutes past the hour. Welcome back to Jeff Koinange Live. We're going to go straight to our one-on-one with Kenya's Principal Secretary, Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Macharia Kamau. Ambassador, apologies. You've been very patient. I know you've had a long day. I begin with an apology, sir. Thank you for your time. Okay, real quick. Thank you. Again, let's go to this British advisory, putting us on the red list. How did we get on the red list? Were we warned? Was there any prior notice? Or did you read it like the rest of us in the media or from a tweet? How did we get there?
We got there through a note verbal. That is the note that diplomatic missions sent to other missions. On April Fool's Day, April the 1st, that basically told us that we are now on the red list. And we had to take it from there. But granted, we have been talking with the Brits for a very long time. Remember, we have a great strategic relationship with our British friends. We've known, we have great trading relations, great security relations, great people-to-people relations. We have absolutely very good relations with the British government and the British people. Having said that, the red listing came as a rude shock to many of us, and we've sort of been struggling to manage the impact of that, which of course, as you can imagine, is very negative.
I was actually going to get to the relations between the UK and Kenya, but before I get, let me just say, look, there was a very testy exchange between Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Foreign Office over the weekend. A lot of people are asking, so what's the state of diplomatic relations right now following that testy exchange?
Well, I can tell you the state of diplomatic relations remain good. Obviously, just because we've had an exchange of notes does not mean that we have a broken relationship. It means that we are trying to communicate to each other in a way in which we can get each other's messages across. Now, they chose to send us a note that essentially forced us to respond in equal measure, which we did. But this does not mean we have a broken relationship. It means that we seem to have a misunderstanding as to how we should go about relating to each other, particularly in this time when we have invested so much in building a relationship that is premised on a post-Brexit Britain, a Britain that needs the rest of the world to remain a viable economic entity, to remain a country that is connected with the rest of us, now that is disconnected significantly from Europe. And we thought that that represented something important, and we invested accordingly. We have, as you know, a very good trade agreement that we've agreed with the British. It has very important components on it. It has real advantages for our farmers, our traders, and we think that it promises a very good relationship that we expect to grow in leaps and bounds in the future. And we don't expect this red listing to affect that fundamentally, but we know that in the short run, this is seriously impactful. You just don't stop people traveling and stop everybody traveling through here to the UK and expect that not to have an impact.
Is that why, Balozi, that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs even accused the UK of, quote, vaccination apartheid? As not very diplomatic, is it?
It isn't. What I would say is we're accusing the UK. This is a statement. They didn't use the term vaccine apartheid, but they used the term vaccine nationalism. They use terms like vaccine hoarding. These are terms that have been used in international circles at the United Nations for a very long time. Since this epidemic began to rise and we began to realize that we were going to be faced with a challenge to have access to vaccines. So when we made that little additional twist from vaccine nationalism to vaccine hoarding to vaccine apartheid, What we were trying to say is that we noticed something about this red list. This red list seems to be targeting only countries from certain parts of the world. And there seems to be a disproportionate number of those countries that are from Africa. And we asked ourselves, why? Especially when you look at the numbers of people who are going to the UK from Africa are minimal compared to the number of people who travel to the UK from other countries, which, by the way, have a much heavier burden that they are carrying of this situation with COVID. I mean, in their message to us, which the British sent, they said that we have about 550 Kenyans, or 550 travelers actually, that move between Nairobi and the UK a week. And they said that of those 550, 1/3 were found to have a worrisome variant of the vaccine, of the COVID. So 183 people consequenced this decision by the British authorities. Now, that is shocking when you realize that there are literally tens of thousands of other people who travel from countries like the United States, like France, like the rest of Europe, like Australia, that have huge COVID burdens. They're, 40 times Kenya, that they seem to have no problem with. So why pick on a country with such a small number of travelers coming through your country? And why only certain countries from Africa? This is where the tilt came to this idea that there's something segregationist about this whole approach to the red listing. And it's worrisome. But remember, when we said that we were concerned about vaccine nationalism, this is not something we are accusing the UK about. We are saying that we are seeing a general trend in the world where people are hoarding vaccines. I mean, for example, we have countries that have, 5-6 times ordered 5-6 times as many vaccines as they need. And they've put a block on those vaccines so that when the rest of us are trying to get vaccines, we are told, well, they're just not available because those countries are holding them for themselves. This is just not about the UK. It's about those who are producing vaccines in the world.
But Balozi, if I may, the UK government was very involved in the COVAX vaccine. So when you harshly tell off a country for announcing its own COVID-19 control measures, well, don't you think they can simply tell you, hey, Ambassador, who are dealing with a pandemic here? Everyone for themselves, God for us all.
Of course you can. And they have the right to do so. But that's not how we deal in a civilized world. In a civilized world, we deal with solidarity. We'll deal with comradeship. We'll deal with support for each other. Remember, this vaccine was partially developed here in Kenya. This vaccine was tested here in Kenya, in Kemri, in Kilifi, okay? And we were part of what brought those vaccines into reality. We have as much claim on those vaccines as anyone else does. The very fact that they have the resources to front order those vaccines for themselves should not deny us access to vaccines. And this has got nothing, as I said, to do with Britain singularly. It has to do with vaccine-producing countries that seem to be unable to understand that unless we are all protected, unless all of us are free of this COVID-19 disease, none of us is going to be free of it for a very long time. And remember that the vaccine itself does not give you 100% protection. So it might give them a huge advantage to begin trading and moving in the world. But you know what? Why would they be traveling to countries which are infected with a particular disease? Why would that be something that they would wish to do? We would expect them not to do that. So it's not about the fact that they are producing the vaccines and therefore they have a right to keep them. No, it's about all of us sharing in what is now a common challenge for the world and agreeing that we all work together to try to get this vaccine on the market as quickly as possible.
But Pelosi, pardon me for a moment, conversations like the ones that are happening or happened between Kenya government and the UK government over the weekend were a little harsh. This is something that could have been dealt with maybe through diplomatic back channels and not aired out.
Absolutely.
Your thoughts, sir?
Believe you me, this is our sentiment, and this was our question. How come? Why did it have to come to this? 180 people could not possibly have justified this. I personally can tell you that my minister and I have been in touch with the British government virtually every week for as long as I can remember, either through their mission here or through our embassy in our High Commission in London. We are in touch constantly. This has got nothing to do with our ability to communicate. It's got even nothing to do with our goodwill. We have a tremendous amount of goodwill towards our British friends, a tremendous amount of goodwill. We have been in the midst of a negotiation of a trade agreement. Elements of that trade agreement were being decided, a couple of weeks ago in our parliament? We have been in constant touch. Why this decision came our way on April 1st is beyond us. So I think the person you should be asking that question, actually, is our British friends, or the people you should be asking that question is our British friends. Why would they choose to do this at such a time for such a small number of people who are going to their country? Remember, Jeff, Britain has 4.6 million people who have been infected. 4.6 million people. They have had 126,000 deaths. 126,000. Most of whom are old people. My parents' age and slightly younger, in their 80s, dead. Okay? We have 140,000, maybe, and maybe we've lost about 2,250. I mean, they have 40 times our burden of this problem. Why would they imagine that we are the countries they would want to list? Their country next door, France, okay, has similar numbers. They have 96 or 97,000 people who've died in France. They have a similar burden rate, just a little bit less than the UK. Next door, they have all the variants that they're worrying about in France that are transiting through here, and they're not stopping or red list in France. So I don't know what to tell you, Jeff. This is not for lack of communication. This is not for lack of goodwill. We would rather never have had this issue come up because we were so positive and so excited about the trade relations that we are now building, about the people-to-people relations that we are putting together, about the tourism that we are keeping open. Remember, we were keeping our country open to British tourists, irrespective of the fact that we were being faced with real threats and real conditions of the COVID coming our way too, you see? But we thought it not such a great idea to put a blockage on them. So the question is, why did they choose to do it? You need to pose that question to our British friends.
Pelosi, and you know the history as well as I do. I mean, it goes back decades between Kenya and the UK. From the time of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, remember Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd, you dealt with the likes of Linda Chalker back in the day. So over the years, yes.
I'm not that old, Jeff. I'm not that old.
But you've dealt with the governments, Pelosi. The question is, okay, there's been a myriad of changes in the UK government. Lately, maybe they're changing more than we're changing officials at City Hall. I guess the question is, has something gone terribly wrong between our relationship,
No.
Kenya's relationship, and the UK?
No. On the contrary, we have never, I think we are at our best point in our history. You know, you can have a bit of a row in your home or in your community or even in your country. I mean, if you read our Kenyan newspapers, you'd think we are all about to go for each other's throats. You know, we are expressive people, to put it mildly. But that doesn't mean that there's something fundamentally wrong with us or the country or our relationships necessarily. And it's the same thing with the UK. As I said earlier, we have a great relationship with the UK. My minister today, Minister Rachel Omamo, spoke to their minister, Dominic Raab, and had a great meeting, okay? And they agreed that, you know what, maybe we need to think how we are going to manage these COVID risk issues that are facing us. Maybe we can find a better way. And they've even agreed to set up a joint response committee, okay, a task force to look into it, all right? So we're going to continue talking. I think sometimes when people see things, not verbals, and the newspapers grab them and make headlines out of them, and breaking news happens, people think, oh, well, heck, it's the end of the world. No, Jeff, it's just the way governments relate and people relate. And in our case, it's actually okay. I can tell you, after this conversation that my minister had today, I am more than reassured that we are on track to have one of the best relationships. This trade agreement that was negotiated by the Ministry of Trade, by Betty Minor and P.S. Weru the other day, that trade agreement is going to have tremendous impact for this country. Tremendous impact. And we're in the midst of all of these things. We are negotiating other trade agreements with other countries. And we are trying to transform the way in which Kenya relates to the world. And this little tiff, to use the word that people like to use in our country, is just a tiff. It's something that happens. It's turbulence as you're flying. It's a bump on the road. It's nothing to worry about. But we intend to make our point that Kenya cannot be treated in a manner that is not consistent with its relationship patterns, with its value, with its own ethics, with its own investment in the relationship that we have with anybody. Kenya cannot be taken for granted in any such manner. That point we intend to make.
And just when things seem to be cooling off, Balozi, like you said, a little tiff, a little bump in the road, the U.S. government jumps in and issues a travel advisory. What happens on that side of the Atlantic now with us?
Travel advisory, Jeff, you've been going to the United States for as long as, I don't want to say how long in case I age you in any way, but it's been a while. And maybe in 2/3 of the last 30-odd years, there's been some kind of travel advisory on Kenya. Okay? There's always been. I don't remember a time in the last 10 or 15 years where there hasn't been some kind of travel advisory on Kenya.
But this one is COVID related,
Balozi.
It's COVID related. They're saying, they're advising the citizens not to visit Kenya.
Jeff, the United States of America has had 550,000 deaths from COVID. All right? The last time I looked, they had 31 million people infected. That's 2/3 of our population. All right? If they want to advise their people not to travel to Kenya, that's perfectly right. That's their right. But it's an absurdity. All right? Our numbers pose no threat to anybody. Our situation here poses no threat to anybody. You need to ask our American friends why they would choose to do this. And when we talk about vaccine or apartheid, when we begin to talk about reactions that seem disproportionate to the problem that the countries are facing, you need to ask yourself, why would they do that to such a friendly country as Kenya? That's a question the Americans need to answer, not me.
Yeah, but you seem kind of annoyed with that. It seems like, it's very annoying that it should come at a time like this.
It's very sad, Jeff. Come on. What, I'm supposed to celebrate that? I'm supposed to be happy I'm not annoyed. I'm just disappointed. You know, when your friend keeps letting you down for awkward reasons that are unsustainable, for reasons that are inexplicable, you have to ask yourself, why would they do that? What is it that they gain by doing that? I don't know. You know, but in diplomacy, what we do is keep moving. We remain positive, we remain engaged, we have a good working relationship with the United States. We will continue to have one. We hope to sign a free trade agreement as well with them that's going to bring profit and wealth and prosperity to Kenya. We have the AGOA system that's in place that has brought great profit and great prosperity to some sections of our society. Why would I not celebrate that? So they've chosen to put in an advisory. Maybe it's to cover themselves with insurance. Maybe it's because they want to make sure that anybody who travels here cannot accuse them of never knowing. They're a litigious society, and maybe that's the way they chose to handle it. We think it's unfortunate. We've told them severally that this is not the way to deal with a good friend. And we trust that they will continue to listen to us, and as time goes by, they will see that this is not a wise way of going about business.
Balozi, back to UK-Kenya relations now. In less than 48 hours, flights coming in, going out, seas, especially, well, passenger flights, that is. Question is, and you mentioned that passenger great flights. Trade deal inked a few weeks ago. What happens to cargo flights, KQ cargo flights, for instance? Kenya exports flowers, veggies, fruits to the UK. What happens to those flights?
Well, we would hope that they will continue, okay? This challenge that we're facing right now, we have both been very careful, both the UK and Kenya, not to single out cargo flights. There's a good reason why. Because we recognize that we need to keep the trade routes alive, okay? And like I said, we don't understand why 500 souls traveling through Kenya a week should pose a threat to any country such as the UK. But the UK has to answer that question, as I said. But once they've stopped our people traveling, so there's no Kenyan allowed to travel, nobody can come through here and travel, so they basically killed Kenya Airways passenger load. Why would you put your flights on? So we had no choice but to say, okay, no flights for anybody between here and the UK. Now, we say we want to review this within 4 weeks, all right? Within 4 weeks. We would love to review it within a week, actually. But we have to allow them to go through their motions. They are carrying an extremely heavy burden of this disease. And maybe in their imagination, maybe in their calculation, this is the best they can do by means of a response with the rest of us. But all I can tell you is that we don't think it's the way to go, okay? And we hope that once we begin to have this conversation that has now been triggered by my minister, Rachel Omamo, today, that it's going to help us resolve this issue very, very quickly. And my expectation is by the summer, as they say in the northern climates, by May, June, we shall have this resolved at the very latest. But they have to be prepared. They have to be willing to allow people to move through their country. We cannot make them do that. We can't force them to do this. They have to be willing. And so when they're good and ready, we shall also be good and ready.
Balozi, but you mentioned we shall review in 4 weeks' time. Can we afford this as a country? Don't you see us being the biggest loser in this?
I don't know. You tell me. Look, like I said, they made the decision, right? So I tell you not to visit my home. I don't want you coming through my farm or, on your way, which happens to be a shortcut on your way to somewhere else. That's your choice, you see. We can't impose ourselves on the UK, all right? We can't put people on flights and tell them fly anyway. They are the ones who've chosen to cut us off. And of course it hurts, or else why would we protest? We are protesting because it hurts. We are saying we're disappointed because we think it's unnecessary. We think there's no justification. There's nothing wrong with us saying that, Jeff. And we have taken incredible precautions here, Jeff. You know, those numbers that you see in Kenya, despite the fun that people like to make them in newspapers, I saw some editorial the other day that was infuriating to me. I could not believe that a Kenyan newspaper could write an editorial that tried to second guess the attempts that this country has put, the sacrifices that the population has made to try to contain this disease. And by the way, very successfully. Okay? Like I said, our numbers are minuscule compared to those in Europe. And I don't care what you say about climate, and it's got nothing to do with that. It has to do with behavior, and it has to do with restraint, how people are managing themselves, and it has to do with COVID protocols. And the reason we know this is because there are other countries in Africa which haven't done that and are in serious trouble. So we know we've done the right thing here. And therefore, when we put that out there and tell a partner like the UK, look, you know what we're trying to do. You know the effort we are putting into this. And we say, why would you lock us out? Okay? It's one thing to tell us we don't want anybody flying through there, okay, from another country. Okay, maybe we could have thought, oh, well, okay, maybe that other country might have a problem. But that's not what they said. They said no Kenyans. All right? And then nobody else either. This is not a friendly thing. So it's a problem. But my view, by the way, just so that you know, is that as soon as the UK begins to get a handle on this situation, they're doing remarkably well with their vaccination program. As soon as they get that level of herd immunity that they're aiming for, maybe a third, maybe a little bit more of their population, I think a sense of comfort will come to them. And I think they will be able then to reach out to the rest of the country. Remember, Kenya is not the only country. There's 39 countries that are on that list. So there's many countries, Brazil, Chile, out in Asia, in the Middle East, the rest of Africa. So there's quite a few countries. But it's their choice, and we have to respect that.
Yeah, Balozi, every time you take off your glasses, it means you're really getting a notch more annoyed, for lack of a better word. But let me put it to you politely, Balozi. This is like a staring contest to see who blinks first. Is that what we're looking at here?
No. Oh, to stare what, Jeff? I mean, come on. I promise you, and I promise the nation through you, that we have bent over backwards, and we are bending over backwards, that we are speaking to each other, okay? That Jane Marriott and I, the High Commissioner here, have conversations virtually every day. Thankfully, most of them have nothing to do with COVID, all right? We have happy conversations. We're discussing what we can do to improve UK-Kenya relations. It's all we ever talk about, all right? And I can assure you, my minister, when she speaks to her counterparts, is just as positive and as friendly and as solution-orientated. As I said, Betty Minor, the CS for Trade, PS for Trade, my dear friend Weru, everybody is doing great things. His Excellency the President, who time and again has reached out to the Prime Minister of the UK, not just on COVID. In fact, COVID is the least of the things he reaches out on. He reaches out on issues of education, on issues of youth, on issues of technology, on issues of climate change. I mean, we are at it all the time, Jeff, all the time. So let's put this whole little COVID thing in its perspective. It is serious, yes. but it isn't terminal. It isn't something that is fundamentally disruptive of our relationship. Far from it. That's what I have to give you assurance and give every Kenyan out there who's listening that assurance.
That's really good reassurance, Balozi, because the relationship, like you said, stems from everything from trade, tourism, to security. And as you know, there's a massive British base up north in Laikipia, the British Army Training Unit in Kenya, Batuk. Does that threaten that relationship with the base, with the Foreign Office? Is there a threat there of any kind?
I don't know. I mean, do they still want to come and travel here? I expect there is no threat at all. My view on that is that that's a fundamentally important relationship to Kenya and to the UK. My view on that is that we do not want to see anything disrupt our security relationship with the UK, the US, or any of our other special relationship partners. Why would we? We have a bigger threat just next door. Big threat. We don't want to see ourselves exposing ourselves in any way that might make us even more vulnerable. No, Jeff, you have to believe me when I tell you that this incident, if it was left to me, we wouldn't even be discussing it because I know it'll pass. Okay? But I know that you need to hear about it, the people of Kenya need to hear about it. So I'm here to tell them that we will manage this as we have managed everything else. And the outcome will be positive and maybe even better for us.
All right, Balozi, we'll end that topic right there. Take a quick break, come back. I want to come back and ask you a question about 200,000 people signing an online petition for the country not to get a loan from the IMF. I mean, is that embarrassing for the for Ministry of Foreign Affairs? I want to ask you that when we come back. And also, like you said, the danger next door. Let's talk about relations with Somalia and also Tanzania's new government since the death of President Magufuli. What's the relationship there? Let's talk about that when we come back. Thanks so much for your time, Balozi. Stand by. We're going to take a quick break right here in Jeff Koinange Live. And also, we'll take your tweets and messages. We'll ask Balozi what you're thinking out there. At Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag JKLive. JKLive takes a break. We'll be back in a moment. Kenyans, citizens, they petitioned to the IMF not to give Kenya a loan. From where you sit at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, how do you handle such a online petition against your own country by your own citizens?
Oh, Jeff, first of all, it's 250,000 people, right? I'm not sure that number is verifiable or verified. But let's take for granted that it's 250,000 people. You know, there's some countries on this continent and in this world where their citizens are not allowed to express themselves as freely as they are here. And I welcome it personally. I don't think it's a bad thing for a very minute section of the population to express themselves about a matter that they consider to be important to them. So, you know, I don't have a problem with it. Let them express themselves. But let's ask ourselves, what exactly is going on here? What exactly is going on here? What is it that they're protesting? Okay? It's a loan amount. And this is a loan amount that is needed by this country to invest in what we all need to make this country develop and progress, which is infrastructure. And the reason why we've been stuck in second and third gear for the last 40 years is because we don't have the infrastructure to give us the great leap forward. So we need money to build that infrastructure. If we had oil coming out of the ground, gas coming out of the ground, if we had gold reserves all over the country like some countries, then you wouldn't need. You'd just sell your gas, sell your oil, and invest it in your infrastructure and let that transform your economy and transform your society. Many countries are lucky and they have that facility. We don't have it. What is Kenya? Kenya is a country of entrepreneurs, all right? A country of entrepreneurs. Do you know how much I heard today that Kenyans take in form of loans from M-Pesa alone? 1.2 billion Kenya shillings. Kenyans. Do you know how much they take in a year? 500 billion. I mean, that's the kind of money that if we could get from the IMF, all right, we wouldn't need to worry. But we need to go to the IMF. Now, the best people to speak about this issue is not sorry, I got interrupted on the phone. The best people to speak about this issue is not, can they still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, Belozo, carry on.
The best people to speak about this issue, of course, is the National Treasury, not me, all right?
Yeah, but when
But I will tell you this, from where I sit, it looks like a very good proposition. And let me just tell you that it is unimaginable that the International Monetary Fund would not know the fundamentals of our economy, okay? That they would have no idea, that they would just give us money knowing full well that we're not going to be able to raise this money back, that we're not going to be able to pay this money. If anybody understands our microeconomic framework, it is the IMF, it is the World Bank.
Belozi,
so I'm not so sure this is not
but
storm in a teacup.
At the end of the day, Belozi,
we need to be understanding of the fact that we need to invest, and we don't have the money, and we have to borrow some, and that is normal. And most of us, if not all of us, always borrow money for the infrastructure that we need in our lives. Our homes, our cars, our farms, even sometimes education. We borrow money. So why wouldn't we borrow money for a country that needs to put up the infrastructure to transform our economy?
Belozi, I guess it's, at the end of the day, it's 250,000 people who have little or no trust in the government. That's what I'm saying. They're saying the insinuations of mismanagement, corruption, incompetence of government to handle loans. It's just 250,000 people who are... Can you hear me, Belozi? You can't hear me. Oh. All right, we're calling you right now, Belozi. Stand by. We're calling you back right now. Must have been a little connection mishap, but it was just to update our viewers. We're talking about the petition that was online that was trending for the last 24, 36 hours. Up to 250,000 people asking the IMF not to loan Kenya or not to grant Kenya a loan that it had asked for. So, Belozi says, look, it's just 250,000 people, and, people are speaking their minds, which is fine. Okay. Belozi, you got me back? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Belozi?
I can hear.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Look, what I was alluding to was that, okay, you said it's 250,000 people. Yes, it's people speaking their minds. But these are people who are alluding to the fact that, look, we have little or no trust in the government. There's so much mismanagement and corruption and incompetence to handle loans that, I'm not voicing it for them, but I'm just saying this is probably what they meant for the most part, Belozi.
Yeah, where do they get that narrative from? I don't know. Again, I look at things from a global perspective, all right? Am I saying that there is no incidence of corruption? Of course not. Am I saying that there is no incidence of incompetence? Of course not. But, Jeff, you've been around the world a couple of times. Name me these countries, okay, that are doing fantastically well, that don't have incidences of these issues. And you may say, okay, we need to worry about those things. Of course we do. But this is not about corruption. This is not about inefficiency per se. This is about recognizing that we have to invest in the infrastructure, and we don't have the resources ourselves locally to do it. And therefore, we have to seek those resources from the best places possible. I mean, we don't have to go to the World Bank. We can go to the private sector. And you know how much that money costs. You know, the IMF is probably our best deal going. So why wouldn't we go there? And my view on this, and again, I am not the right authority to be speaking on matters of loans. That's the National Treasury, and they should be invited to your program to have this conversation with you. My view on this is that we do not have a choice. We will never become the country we aspire to if we don't develop the infrastructure that we need. Irrespective of the government in power, we have to invest in our infrastructure. Health, education, roads, airports, ports. We need these things desperately, or else we'll remain a third world country that is unable to be competitive in the world. And that is unacceptable, I would imagine, for any Kenyan.
All right, Balozi, point noted. We're going to move from the IMF right next door to Tanzania, following the unfortunate death of President John Pombe Magufuli, and now transitioning to President Samia Suluhu Hassan. How would you describe the change of guard and relations between Kenya and Tanzania now?
Well, I would describe the change of guard as admirable. I think the Tanzanians have once again shown themselves to have a very effective transitional system. They have moved from one president to another without any drama, without any political fallout. They have consistently been able to adhere to their constitution. They have consistently been able to show that despite a shock such as the one they suffered with the loss of His Excellency President John Pombe Magufuli, that despite that shock, which we all are deeply affected by, they were able to manage a transition and put a woman in power and consolidate their constitution even further. There is nothing there that one shouldn't admire. So we're very proud of Tanzanians, and we're very proud of the new president. She's a graceful lady, proven to be of great intelligence and great insight. And, you know, we wish her all the very best, because Tanzania deserves it, and because East Africa deserves it, because Tanzania is such an important, integral part of our community.
Absolutely, Balozi. And already President Suluhu has announced a raft of policy changes. What do you think of the formation of a panel to advise the government on COVID-19? Already that's been announced. Your thoughts?
I mean, I think she saw it wise to do that, and I have to respect that and, in fact, celebrate that. And I think it shows, as I said, that she is wise, she is deeply insightful. She was the most traveled of the senior government officials in her country, so she knows. And I think she said, it's a quote, and that's only can be said by someone who knows, having traveled around the world, that these challenges are very real and that they need special expert advice to get them solved. So I can only celebrate that decision.
Yeah, here's another decision that'll make you smile, Balozi. President Suluhu announcing the ease of doing business in Tanzania.
Why wouldn't I, Jeff? You know, we have a great community here, the East African community. Tanzania is now among our top 5 trading partners. right up there with Uganda, and we truly appreciate this. In fact, the value that those two countries bring to us through trade and the value that we take to them in trade has given all of us together incredible independence, incredible room for maneuver in politics, in economics, in security, in people-to-people relations. The more business we do together, the more open our borders, the more our trading entrepreneurs can move freely, the more goods and services and even people can move freely between our countries, the more prosperity we shall enjoy. We will never have to look for a long period of time outside our own region to accelerate our economy's growth. So I must tell you, I personally feel very, very encouraged by this. And I have deep conviction that, as I said, her insightfulness, her sense of knowing of the world is going to have a very deep impact on Tanzania and through Tanzania on this wonderful community of ours. And so we really do celebrate her, and we hope that she will be as successful as we would wish her to be.
Absolutely, Balozi. You mentioned that Tanzania is one of the top 5 trading partners that Kenya has. And a lot of Kenyans are asking the question, look, it's so difficult getting the basics, like, for instance, a work permit in Tanzania. And they feel that Ministry of Foreign Affairs, doesn't address that issue as much as it should. Do you think that will change now? You think it'll be easier now for Kenyans, hopefully, to get a work permit and work easily and travel around Tanzania without any issues?
Well, first of all, you know about communities around the world, right? Economic blocs. They always have challenges, I think this idea that because we signed a piece of paper that said we're an economic bloc, that tomorrow, everybody is going to be, holding hands and singing Kumbaya, this kind of thing is just not going to transpire. It's not how life works. The European community, I mean, look at that scene in Europe with Brexit and the challenges they had even before they got to Brexit. That's not because they don't wish to have a good community. It's because there are challenges that they were trying to resolve. Some worked. That's why the vast majority of the European community has become the great economic power that it has become. But they still have challenges among themselves. Okay? People-to-people challenges, trade challenges, trucks getting stopped at borders. They have the same issues, by the way. Okay? Look at the Americans and the Canadians. Look at the Americans and the Mexicans and their little NAFTA over there. So these things happen. We, of course, do everything we can within our ministry and our embassy down there under the leadership of Dan Kazungu, goes to great lengths to try to facilitate every Kenyan that it can. We always hope that we will be able to improve our relationship, that we'll be able to have a relationship, particularly Tanzania. Why not? We would hope that our fraternity is strong, and that with the new leadership in place, we shall even be able to take bigger leaps of cooperation. And I agree with you. We need more Kenyans to travel freely, to trade freely, to work freely in Tanzania, just like we need them to be here as well.
Absolutely. Balozi, from our neighbor to the south to our neighbor in the northeast. What's the latest on this territorial dispute between Kenya and Somalia?
I guess you had to go there, Jeff. In truth, you know that the maritime boundary issue is in the hands of the Attorney General and the Solicitor General. And again, I would invite you to ask them to come and have a conversation with you on these issues. But from a foreign affairs perspective, we are very clear that all these international organizations which fall under our purview must treat Kenya with respect. After all, we are willing signatories to these organizations, and we contribute to them. The Kenyan taxpayer pays money to these organizations so that they can be the functional entities that they are. So there's no reason why we would see an international institution such as the ICJ, mistreating a country like Kenya that is not only an exemplary democracy, but a country that tries to engage the international community through all these institutions in an open, engaging, and forthright manner. Now, we had a problem, and that's why we decided it's okay, you need to go on with this case. We've told you this is not the right place to have this case. We've told you that this case is not set up in a way in which we can functionally engage. We've told you that your bench that is dealing with this case is infiltrated by people who are not neutral and who are not sympathetic to Kenya. And we've told you that we need time to get our act together so that we can engage you. And you have chosen to ignore all those things. All right? This is when we have been very clear right from the beginning that we did not believe this case belonged in the ICJ. And we had very good and solid reasons why we believed that.
Balozi, if you can still hear me, so...
Bench of that
Yep.
ICJ. So,
Yep.
at the end of the day, we say, thank you very much, but no thank you. So let them go on with their case.
But Balozi, it begs the question, why go in only to pull out? Why do that? Because it looks like now Kenya has, withdrawn, pulled out of this case at the International Court of Jurists. It looks like, Kenya doesn't come out looking good in this right now.
Oh, I don't know. I don't agree with you. I think we look very good. We look like we were responsible enough to make the attempt to try to explain ourselves to the court. Like I said, we are members of it. It's your club. You just don't walk away from your club. You first of all tell them why you're walking away, so that maybe they can change their minds. And maybe other members will say, wait a minute, why are we mistreating that member state? Why are we doing that to them? They have made a very persuasive case. They have actually left us not because they didn't like to be with us, not because they hadn't joined us, not because they were not part of the fraternity, but because we have mistreated them. And maybe they may be able to come to their senses as a consequence. So, no, I don't quite agree with you, Jeff. I think we come out looking pretty good.
Okay, so since then, tensions have risen between the two countries, each country recalling its respective ambassador. Do we still have an embassy in Mogadishu, Balozi?
By the way, it happened before that. And I'll have you know, between you and me, since no one else is listening, that this was all part of a broader ploy, okay? That this had nothing to do with the case. That the termination or rather the sending away of our ambassador from Mogadishu was a political ploy. I mean, let's call it what it is. This has been written up in our newspapers, so I'm not saying anything anyone doesn't know. It's an unfortunate thing that the politics of the country, a country that is in dire straits. I mean, Jeff, you need to travel to Somalia. You really need to take your camera to Somalia, okay? It's really important because I don't think people understand just how much trouble that country is in, just how devastated that society has been by that war of theirs, by that interscene war of theirs, by their inability to resolve their basic and fundamental problems. You need to take your cameras there, Jeff. And I'm telling you, you'll be shocked. The world will be shocked. Kenyans will be shocked. And that they have time in their politics to take on a country like Kenya that has so invested in their well-being is beyond us. So what can I tell you? That situation is not just about the ICJ, okay? The very fact that they thought it would be interesting to break relations with a country like Kenya is indicative of a highly dysfunctional political state, all right? And it is sad We would rather that was not the case, Jeff. And we hope that soon we will be able to normalize that relationship as well. Because Kenya always comes back to the table. Kenya always comes back to the table and makes another stab, another attempt at building stronger relations. Because we need our neighborhood to be peaceful. We need our neighborhood to be strong. We need the prosperity that can be brought around by this neighborhood. When we have detractors, when you have people who are obsessed with things that have nothing to do with prosperity, with peace, with security, then we run into these challenges. But that doesn't mean we'll give up, Jeff. We will never give up because it's not in our nature. It is not in the nature of Kenyans to give up. We never gave up on Somalia. We never gave up on South Sudan. And by the way, we were there for Uganda when Uganda was having its challenges. We are there for many countries who have come here and sought our counsel and our wisdom. And Kenyans should be very proud of this because it's not a Macharia Kamau thing. It's a societal thing. It's what Kenya does for this continent and for our region. And I'm particularly very proud of it.
By the way, Balozi, you said it's just you and me and nobody else is watching. There are lots of people glued to everything you're saying, so rest assured. And also, we will make that trip to Mogadishu. I promise you that at some point.
Please do.
What about when Somalia accuses Kenya of interfering in their internal politics? What do you tell them, sir?
Like I said, it's the same individuals who thought it would be interesting to take us to the ICJ, irrespective of the fact that we had a memorandum of understanding that would not happen and that we would respect the maritime boundary between us, irrespective of the fact that we have, since 1975, again in 1979, again in 2009, many times discussed the maritime boundary in international spaces, submitted maps to the United Nations. For 39 years, Jeff, they never challenged this. And then one day, I think it was an October day in 2014, somebody got up in Mogadishu and thought it would be a bright idea to inspire this case at the ICJ. Now you tell me that that is the kind of action you would expect from people who are being purposeful, who are peace builders, who are looking to create great fraternal relations between countries. And so, what can I tell you? Those decisions keep coming out of this current administration that's there in Mogadishu, and we are very regretful of it. And we don't think that the majority of the Somali people are for it. Because when you look at their country, when you visit their country, they're not celebrating their condition. They're celebrating their country because everybody loves their country, but they're not celebrating their condition. And that condition is self-inflicted. And it's something that they know that they need to do better at getting right. And we want to be there for them to help them get it right.
All right, Pelosi, look, a lot of people have been tweeting, commenting, and asking you questions. Before I let you go, let's just go to just a couple of them, and then we'll call it a night. Ruth Jamatai is on Twitter saying, hey, we've seen reports that the local community will seek compensation for fires allegedly caused by Batuk in Laikipia. Is that something the government will support?
I have no idea, Jeff. That is a question that I am not informed of in a manner that I can answer you. But I think that from what I saw, there was great regret. It wasn't purposely lit, it was an accident. And I think that there needs to be a conversation around it, no doubt, and there has been one, because we are a free country. Kenyans will speak their minds. But I don't have the kind of answer that might satisfy her right now.
All right, let's go to Wesley Koske, who says, please ask Ambassador Macharia Kamau these three questions. Is Kenya's foreign policy management experiencing turbulence?
Okay, that's one. What's the third one?
Second
and third one?
Okay, is Nairobi losing its position as a hub for multilateral diplomacy to Kigali or Addis? That's two. I guess. Okay, let's answer those two.
All right. Listen, who did you say? What's her name
Koske,
again?
Wesley Koske.
Wesley, it's he. Okay, listen, Wesley, I must say this to you. First of all, thank you for the question, but I want you to be reassured. And again, please look at the facts. You know, we have a very vibrant press and a very vibrant and aggressive social media, so sometimes facts get lost in there somewhere. Nairobi is the premier destination for diplomacy, for business, commerce, and matters of international peace and security in the region, if not on the continent today. The premier. And I'm not saying this because I'm the principal secretary. I'm telling you this because you just need to look at the facts. We are now, our president, for example, is the, as you know, recently elected chairman of the East African Community. That's already almost 200 million people right there that we are trying to work with to provide leadership for our region. That doesn't happen because you're a failing capital. Nairobi, and our president, is the president office of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. That is 79 countries that stretch from the Pacific across the world to the Caribbean and to Africa. And I'm telling you, he'll be speaking tomorrow, by the way, to that organization, is the leader who was the first to bring a summit-level conversation around that organization. And he did that during COVID. And it is us who have been able to bring the Caribbean and parts of the Pacific together with Africa. And in fact, we are currently working with the African Union on a Caribbean summit to happen here in Nairobi sometimes in June, everything being equal. That doesn't happen because Nairobi is a failing capital. We have been elected by a popular global nation-state election as a member of the UN Security Council. And we have provided leadership, and our president has engaged, and he has spoken in ways in which have shown us to be leaders on matters of climate change and security, COVID and security. You name it, we have remained seized. On matters of counterterrorism, Kenya is known to be one of the foremost speakers, foremost pronouncers of global policy on these issues. Again, you can verify this, so I'm not making this up. We are a member of the African Union Peace and Security Council because the African Union recognizes that we are a pillar of peace and security in East Africa and on our continent. Kenya, Nairobi is the destination. And country after country recognizes this and engages us. And we are proud that we are able to contribute in this way because that's what it means to be a civilized country in a modern world where you're trying to do what is good and what is right, and you're trying to build solidarity, and you're trying to build unity, and you're trying to build greater multilateralism in the world, because that is what makes us strong, because we are stronger together. And Kenya recognizes this, and Kenya champions this. So rest assured, Wesley, rest assured, and everyone who's listening to this program, that we are doing everything in our power with our leadership and under the guidance of our president and this administration to deliver on this very important challenge that Kenya has taken up, to be the leader in our region and to be the leader in our continent. We take this very seriously.
Indeed. One final question here. A tweet from Drake Karyuki. He's asking about what's being done on the issue of South Sudan. Now, you can't verify this, but he's saying this Kenyan truck drivers are reportedly being killed and the trucks burned down.
Yes, it's true. And, Jeff, I just had The last 96 hours was just one thing after the other. And one of the things that I had to deal with, and we had to deal with as a ministry, is this issue of the South Sudan. And remember that we have also invested significantly. Kenya worked very hard to bring together the warring parties of South Sudan and to usher in their independence, what will be 10 years now. And we're going to celebrate 10 years of South Sudan independence very soon. But we have seen that the country has remained challenged by governance issues and by security issues. And as a consequence, our truckers have, some of them, lost their lives, and our truck owners have lost their trucks. And I personally was involved in this matter, speaking directly to the government, protesting this matter, and they wrote back to us and reassured us that they will take charge of that situation. And as of 2 days ago, they deployed their military on one of the main conduits where rebels had begun attacking truck drivers to secure that route. So I am confident that the leadership in Juba understands that trade with Kenya, trade with Uganda, trade with all its neighbors will be crucial for the success of that country. I tell you, this idea that trade is the way forward for all of us, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, DRC, this idea is sacrosanct, and we have to protect it as Kenyans, because it is the idea that allows all our interpreters to maximize their possibilities. And when we see our truckers getting attacked, when we see their trucks getting burnt, we are not happy, and we protest and we take up these issues. So yes, it is a concern, and we hope we have seen the last of it.
Yeah, Balozi, it looks like I owe you a very large drink next time I see you for keeping you up so late. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well done. Good job.
Ambassador. I appreciate you too, Jeff. Thank you very
sir.
much.
Ambassador Macharia Kamau there, Principal Secretary, Foreign Affairs. Wow, breaking it down, calling it as he sees it. It is, after all, what it is. Thanks so much to Balozi for being up. Whoa, is that the time? All right, and remember, if it's Wednesday, it's all about those 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other, JKL. Thanks so much for being a part of the show. Sorry for keeping you up so late. Let's go home. It's time. Good night. Good luck. Good.